Welcome back to Citizen Extra. Let's now take you to Parliament, where Stephen Leto is about to get an exclusive interview with the Leader of Majority in the National Assembly, who's also Garissa Township Member of Parliament, Aden Duale. Stephen Leto, can you give us that interview?
Indeed, Wahiga Maura there in studio. Indeed, we are coming to you live from Parliament buildings, where we are having an exclusive interview with the Leader of the Majority Party, Aden Duale, who is also the Member of Parliament for Garissa Town, to just dissect to us on the issue of the mass resignation of the IEBC, now throwing the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission operations in limbo. Already we are seeing polls apart, and straight away, Wahiga, I want to put a question to Majority Leader Aden Duale. What is your take on the mass resignation of the commissioners that we saw yesterday?
Not really mass. 3 commissioners decided to call it a day as commissioners of the IEBC. And from where I sit, the reason they gave looks very vague. It doesn't convince you why you should resign as a commissioner. And I think they owe the Kenyan people an explanation to what really transpired. And they need to make full disclosure. Number 2, I think it's now coming out very, very clearly that the chair of the IEBC, Wafula Chebukati, as the leader of that commission, has failed. He has offered to give leadership, and not the first time. Wafula Chebukati, I think, in the last general election, in the repeat election, and all the subsequent events has proved beyond reasonable doubt that he cannot create a synergy with the Secretariat led by Ezra Chiloba. He cannot create synergy with other stakeholders. You remember all the political parties had serious issues with the IEBC. He cannot now create even synergy with the 6 other colleagues, including his vice chair. So from where I sit, I think Wafula Chebukati has failed as the chair of IEBC.
And so what does this resignation mean to the country?
Number 1, what does it mean to IEBC? I mean, they lack the quorum, so they can't function. From yesterday, Wafula Chebukati has no legal basis to call a commission meeting. So he's just sitting now in the office. He can't give directions. The law is very, very clear on the issue of the quorum. He can't have a plenary because the quorum is lacking. So Wafula Chebukati and his 3 colleagues, his 2 colleagues, cannot function. So, and the Constitution does not anticipate that kind of a scenario. The Constitution anticipates where there is a quorum. When Rosalina Kombe left, the Commission still had a quorum. They could still have a plenary and do their daily functions as commissioners of IEBC. But from yesterday, the whole commission now is in disarray. And I think the best thing for the country is how do we pick the pieces? And I'll invite through the speaker, I'll invite the relevant committee of the National Assembly that oversees the operations and the budget that interviewed Wafula Chebukati and his colleagues, the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, to move with speed and see how they can resolve the stalemate. And if possible, allow Wafula Chebukati and his 2 colleagues to have a transitional exit. One more important thing that many people in the country are not discussing is that as we sit here today, there is no procedure in law in the IEBC Act in the first schedule on how the next commission can be constituted or recruited. So Parliament has another, I think, 50 days, if I look at, to amend the first schedule of the IEBC Act and provide for a mechanism in which a selection panel is to be constituted. That selection panel is supposed to be sent to the President. The President has to send it back to the National Assembly for approval. Once they are approved, then they will start afresh the process of recruiting a new commission. So if you look at the timelines given, you know, in all this, and we have prepared this morning, we will share with the country. I'm sure the legal department of parliament and the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee have a copy on that process. And it is, if we stick to that timeline, it will be about 50 days. And you know, we have a by-election taking place today in Kinondo in Kwale. So I think we should not, you know, start panicking like the 3 commissioners. I think we must handle this thing in a very sober way and find out how does Chebukati's commission exit and as a country. And I think this is the best chance, because historically we have been constituting commissions very close to the election date, and it used to be very, very polarized. In 2013, Isaac Hassan and his team came barely 1 or 2 years to the election. Chebukati's team came 1 year to the election. So I think this is the best time. In 2018, we fix this problem once and for all.
And so you've said about this is the time to fix the IEBC, and already we are the country is in a political crisis. Do you support their calls for the resignation of the other 3 commissioners who have remained, including the IEBC chair, Wafula Chebukati? And some of the sentiments are also been echoed by Senate Minority Leader, Majority Leader Kipchumba Murkomen, saying that Wafula Chebukati should also resign alongside the 2 other commissioners. Do you also hold the position?
No, I think number one, as I've said, all these issues put together, the buck stops with the chair of the IEBC. Has he failed? In my opinion, he has failed. Either to have a united secretariat, to have a good working relation with the secretariat, and more fundamentally, to bring all his commissioners on board. So Wafula Chebukati, in my opinion, has no moral standard to be in office 1 day longer, and I'm sure his 2 colleagues. But 3 commissioners have resigned. 3, including the chair, have remained. Now it is incumbent upon the leadership of this country, the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee, the National Assembly, Parliament as a whole, and the entire leadership of the political parties, the stakeholders who have an interest in IEBC, must come together and find out how the remaining 2 commissioners and the chair are given an exit, so that what will concern the country will be how to amend the law, how to constitute or recruit, to begin the process of recruiting or constituting a fresh commission.
Is Parliament ready to resolve all this in terms of starting its sittings and preparing for the amendments?
Yes. Parliament is ready. Parliament is duly constituted. There is a relevant committee that is even dealing with the matter of IEBC as we speak, in terms of the budget allocations, in terms of the daily operations. So the infrastructure is in place, the legal infrastructure is in place. The legislature has all the time to make sure that we give the country a fresh commission. But all that must be done, you know, in a very organized and transparent manner. So that we should not, you know, say from where we sit and and in our political rallies that so and so must go. I mean, we have now agreed in principle, I think, from both sides of the political divide, that both the Secretariat and the Commission, as the commissioners, have failed in their duty as per their mandate within the reading of the IEBC Act. Yes.
And there are concerns from the sides of the opposition, and we saw yesterday James Orengo, the Senate Minority Leader, saying that the resignation of the IEBC commissioners yesterday put into question the concluded general election. What is your take on that?
No, I think that's why I said leaders must be must be responsible in what they say, and I say leaders from both sides of the political divide. The elections were conducted by the IEBC at all levels, from MCA to the president. The constitution and the laws of the land provide that if you are aggrieved, you go to to the corridors of justice and filed a complaint or a petition. And of the many, many petitions filed, I think only 11 various seats were nullified, majority were upheld, including that of the second presidential elections of President Kenyatta. So I think that is the history, and we don't want to go back to it. I mean, what is on the table now is the crisis at IEBC. And the crisis at IEBC is 3 commissioners have left. The CEO is on compulsory leave. How do we use the legal framework available to reconstitute a fresh secretariat, a fresh commission, and give it time that in the next general election by 2022, they have put in place the necessary election infrastructure, so that we don't go back to the same story.
Well, I've seen a tweet by Norman Magaya, the CEO for the National Super Alliance, saying that political parties should now be the ones to constitute or present nominees of the IEBC as to serve in the commission. Do you think that is the way to go?
I think the mistake we made, and I want to make it very, very clear, the mistake we made was when we diverted from the legal framework that was put in place after the new constitution on the process of constituting an IEBC commission. You remember after the many demonstrations and the Isaac-led commission were given a soft landing, the country went out and they gave the regional leaders to constitute a commission. In my honest opinion, that was where we made a mistake, and that was where we got the worst product. The worst product of them was Chebukati and his team. I mean, Chebukati was fronted by the regional leaders, and a number of us were against it. That the old law of 2013, before Isaac Hassan came to the office, that recruiting panel, which was comprising of many people, just like the way the DPP was recruited, LSK represented, the workers of the country being represented, the Public Service Commission taking the lead. That is the time when we had the best commissions. And most of the commissions were formed, and the independent offices were formed by that recruiting panel. But in 2016, 2017, when we annulled that law and brought in for temporary measure the religious body. So, Article 251 of the Constitution talks about that commissions will be independent. And IEBC, as a commission, the key players in its menu are the political parties. So the political parties cannot have a say in who sits in IEBC as a commissioner. Then that commission will miss that element of independency which is given to it by the Constitution, in that the commission will not act in the direction of any individual or any political entity. So political parties, from where I sit, I'm going to oppose it, that political parties should, as the key players, should not have a role in selecting or being part of the constituting panel of an IEBC team, where the IEBC is supposed to be the referee of a match that belongs to the political parties.
Well, that's well said. And also the last topic on referendum. There is a bill that is being sponsored by a Tiati Member of Parliament, Kasait Kamket. He says it's on course. What is the status of that bill as the majority leader of the National Assembly?
Number one, I have seen that Honorable Kamket is dealing with his bill in political rallies and in funerals and in media talk shows. His bill is at a very initial stage. It has not even passed. Being a money bill, it must get the concurrence of the Budget and Appropriation Committee of this House. But from where I sit as the leader of majority, going forward, we have only one agenda. Our agenda is how to implement the 4 big projects, legacy projects of President Uhuru Kenyatta. As Jubilee, as the Deputy President, has made it very, very clear. And not only him, even our party leader, the President, has categorically said that we are not ready to put the country into another referendum or campaign mode. That is the position of Jubilee, from the President to the lowest person, the rank and the file of our party. So Honorable Kamket, is carrying a very hot potato. And he doesn't know when to drop it and how to drop it. And being a new member of parliament, I think I'll advise him to consult the ranking members of this house, including myself. And we can tell him what he can do and what he cannot do. Because ultimately, what he's carrying involves a referendum. Because he's trying to alter the framework of the executive. The moment you touch on anything that will alter the framework of the 3 arms of government, whether it's the judiciary, the legislature, or the executive, then that decision belongs to the people of Kenya. It does not belong to the legislature. Neither does it belong to the executive. So those who think, and and I have to make it very clear, in Jubilee, there is no Ruto wing, and there's no Uhuru wing, and there's no Duale wing or Murkomen wing. In Jubilee, we are one, and we all subscribe to one leader, and that's Uhuru Kenyatta. Whatever we do within parliament, outside parliament, beginning with the deputy president, is sanctioned by our leader. We are loyal, we abide to what he says. So those who believe that even the handshake belongs to one side of Jubilee, those are the people who still are living in the old days of Nusum Kate government in a coalition government. From where I sit, Jubilee is one. We have one leader who is also the President of the Republic of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta. So Honorable Kamket, in my opinion, is like you drive on thick superhighway when you know your brakes are failed. So he'll end up and he'll crash politically. His bill will never see the light of the day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That is Majority Leader of the National Assembly, Aden Duale, just trying to give us his views regarding the referendum question, as well as the issue to do with the polls apart. That is the resignation of 3 IEBC commissioners, including its vice chair, and now calls to have Chebukati out of office, which he totally opposes. And now we are taking back to you for normal programming. Back to you, Wahida.
Very insightful interview there, Stephen Leto. We appreciate the thoughts you've been able to get from the Leader of the Majority in the National Assembly, Aden Duale.